Erick Fedde once again was dominant on the mound last night. He's been good all season, but it might not be enough to get him into the All-Star game. I'll discuss why next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written content at southsideshowdown.com. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Turn on those notifications and also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Now, the White Sox beat the Guardians last night 8-2 behind a huge 4-run fourth inning, and Martin Maldonado, of all people, belting a home run to slam the door shut later in the game. The Sox also won because Erick Fedde was outstanding on the mound again. He's been probably the best free agent signing this season in all of baseball. And I'll discuss why his strong first half might not be enough to get him the reward of being an all-star. Then let's discuss Luis Robert Jr.'s attitude. And finally, I had to push back way back Wednesday since I had a Baseball Insider podcast co-host Adam Weinrib on the show yesterday. So let's do Throwback Thursday. And let's look at the last two major rebuild eras, first-round picks, and major trades, and see if there's any historical parallels. This episode of Locked On White Sox is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Now, Erick Fedde is probably the most overlooked pitcher in baseball ever since Garrett Crochet kept elevating himself to ace status. And Luis Robert Jr. and Crochet's trade rumors dominate the Sox storylines, but it is Fedde's trade value that might be the most important since there are less unknowns with him. Robert Jr., you have the injury history and the belief he still has not realized his full potential. Crochet has the innings limits issue since this is his first season as a starter. Fedde, this could just be lightning in a bottle, but the man has showed he made the necessary adjustments after being so bad with the Washington Nationals, they had to go to Korea to revive his career. But he's shown that he should be at the very least a very solid number 3 starter during the rest of his cheap, affordable deal. He still has another year of control at a rock-bottom price for his production relative to the market. So he also has the numbers of an all-star, but the fear is some factors beyond his control might factor into not getting selected. And I say selected as he still could make the AL roster as a named replacement, but selected means your peers view you as an all-star, or the league does as well because it's the players' vote and the league office that names the reserves and the pitchers. But with Crochet being more dominant, that should get him the nod over Fedde. You also have the Sox being absolutely terrible, that his fellow players might decide, let's go vote somebody else in. They might decide to go with pitchers from better teams. And you have to factor in that terrible record and every team needing a representative as to why Fedde might get the snub. The Sox are so bad that the decision might be, so a lot of the players might be thinking, or the league office, the Sox really only deserve one all-star representative, and it's probably Garrett Crochet. But once again, Fedde was enchanting on the mound last night, as TV analyst Steve Stone put it. 6 innings, 1 run, 3 hits, 3 walks, 3 Ks. He is 14th in the league for pitchers in FWAR with 2.4. That's tied with Corbin Burns, who everybody has certified as an ace and has a Cy Young in his trophy case. He is ahead of Dylan Cease, Logan Gilbert, and Aaron Nola. Now, if you prefer BWAR, Fedde's 4.1 has him in the league's top 10 and second among pitchers. His 3.13 ERA is 19th in the league. His expected ERA is 3.48. He has a top 30 FIP with 3.58 and a top 30 BABIP at 268. His 1.13 whip puts him 31st in the league, and his 94 Ks has him in the league's top 40. So I don't know if that, if that's not an all-star, I don't know what is. But here's the thing. He may have been too good too soon. He was one of the few bright spots in April when he had a 2.40 ERA for that month. May's ERA for him was 3.63 and June was 3.48. Now you compare that to Crochet, who was just named the June pitcher of the month. Crochet had those 3 bad starts in April. That gave him a 6.91 ERA for that month, but then he rebounded, and it's more than rebounded. He just totally changed the trajectory of his career. 0.93 ERA in May and a 1.191 in June. And it will depend on how the players vote as pitchers and reserves are selected. And again, the league office also has a say in it because every team needs an all-star representative. And I know it's Bleacher Report, but they have a projection of who will be on the AL All-Star roster for pitchers. And it is the Royals' Seth Lugo, Crochet, Tariq Skubal of the Tigers, Tyler Anderson of the Angels, Ronald Blanco of the Astros, Tanner Houck, I always get it wrong, of Boston. You got Gilbert with Seattle, Emmanuel Clace for Cleveland, Mason Miller for the A's, Andres Munoz for the Mariners, Kirby Yates with the Rangers, and Craig Kimbrell, sorry. Again, try saying that fast 3 times. And he was a former White Sox failure in a trade. Craig Kimbrell of the Orioles. So you got a couple of teams where pitching will serve as their lone all-star representative. And that is why it feels like Fedde is going to be overlooked. Now, if a pitcher makes a start on Sunday before the all-star break, next Sunday, I believe a replacement can be named to actually pitch in the game. And Fedde's last scheduled start is slated for July 9th. That's a Tuesday. That's next Tuesday. So he might be a prime candidate to be named to the all-star team. But the season he's having, he should be a selected all-star. He deserves to be voted in by his peers. Well, last year's Sox all-star representative, Luis Robert Jr., he's been crushing the ball lately. However, he will not be a candidate for the midseason classic as he missed 2 months with an injury. Despite crushing the ball in the series against Cleveland, he drew the ire of fans on Tuesday night. I'll discuss what he did if you've checked out on the Sox and you like to just check in here and there. And I'm going to pose a question about the criticism fans have about him next on Locked On White Sox. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? Well, if you look at my checkbook, it's stuff that I'm buying a ton this summer. But don't stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all your purchases when you stock up on all your summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the Sox wrap up a 3-game set against the Cleveland Guardians today. First pitch is at 12:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter, and thank you for making the show your first listen. Again, lots of great White Sox podcasts out there, lots of great baseball podcasts out there, like the Baseball Insiders with my guest yesterday, Adam Weinrib, and his co-host Robert Murray. Shout out to Adam for joining the show yesterday. I just always ask that you make me your first listen. Sorry, just dealing with a dry throat. So if there's a pause for a water break, and I know it drives some of you guys nuts that I actually dare to drink water because I'm not a camel, but got a little sore throat there. So since I had Adam on yesterday's show, I was unable to discuss the Sox 7-6 walk-off loss to the Guardians. Michael Kopech was unable to keep the game tied through a bad wild pitch that put the winning run on third, and he had to deal with a bad umpire too. But what has saved him from getting the most criticism is Luis Robert Jr. not even attempting to make a throw home on Bo Naylor's sac fly. Robert Jr.'s drive is something that has been questioned by fans for a while now. And I get it. His body language can be less than ideal when he fails. He can make some maddening plays and then just have that look on his face where you're like, do you even care? I get it. Take some bad routes to the ball. He's a free swinger at the plate. But the thing is, he was playing in, and it would have been hard to make a great throw to get Jimenez out at home. But hey, at least make the attempt. So I get the criticism. Make the throw. And the half-heartedness he shows on the field can be frustrating. But here's the thing. Is it all Luis's fault? This is what I want to pose to those that love to love to criticize Luis Robert Jr. for this. Is this a guy who's been dealing with, because he's been a guy who's been dealing with nothing but either mediocre team play, a dysfunctional clubhouse, losing, injuries, and sometimes all of them at once. And that can wear on a man. So should that context be taken into account? Or should you be like, look, you're a professional baseball player. You may be on a relatively affordable team-friendly deal, but you're still making millions of dollars. Act like you care. Try to make a play. Now, Josh Nelson of Sox Machine, he was on his soapbox on X, formerly Twitter, with some other good points about Luis Robert Jr. being criticized for not caring, and maybe you should give him some grace. This is at Sox Machine _Josh. Drags box to the Twitter stage. I don't think Luis Robert Jr. twice tying the game with a 2-run homer and a 2-run single should be overlooked because he didn't make a YOLO throw last night at home. But sure, optics. And then he had to reply to a lot of questions, like the route Luis Robert Jr. took. This is at Sox Machine _Josh. They do, but with one out, any center fielder is in a bad spot. A grounder through the infield or a duck snort have to be shallow enough to charge in. So if the ball is hit at medium depth or further, well, good luck. It's an awful spot to be in for outfielders. And yes, they were playing in. So, and think about it. If it goes over his head, it's game over. If he's playing too deep, it's a duck snort, game over. So you're always going to bring the infield in those situations. And then he responded, somebody did, point out on X, formerly Twitter, that there's probably not a chance in heck Luis Robert Jr. was going to get him out. This is at Sox Machine _Josh. Math suggests Jimenez, I'm butchering his name, but I always think it's Jimenez, is getting from third to home with 3.15 seconds. Average sprint speed in 2024 is at 28.9 feet per second. So flat-footed, Robert would have to chuck a throw that traveled 309 feet, reaching home plate in 3 seconds and allowing Maldonado 0.15 seconds to catch and tag. Yeah, the math wasn't on, Luis Robert Jr.'s side. And also, to be fair to Luis Robert Jr., there's a possibility he might have thought that was the third out because he kind of looked like it. And that goes back then on the manager, Pedro Grifol, and the coaches to make sure Luis Robert Jr. knows how many outs there are. And then Josh addressed, is this the reason why the Sox lost? Because somebody asked him, why are you even bringing this up? At Sox Machine Josh. I still can't get over how Paul DeJong hit Josh Naylor in the back on that throw to third base, and Naylor proceeding to get up and score is still baffling to me. Because somebody brought that up. Like, okay, that wasn't the reason why the Sox lost the game. Paul DeJong commits a terrible error. Michael Kopech throws a wild pitch that allows, gives up the hit, allows the guy on base, throws a wild pitch to get him in the third. But yes, it's Luis Robert Jr. who did not throw the ball home. And again, I get it. But this is what posted because I posed a question on social media. Is it Luis doesn't care, or is the losing dragging on him? Because that's a narrative. That's the perception. And you're entitled to your perception. I get it. But the one thing that sometimes people, when they have perceptions, and I don't mean to lecture, but we tend to not take context into account. What's the context? If it was a clear black and white, like he's just out there, if he has success, great. Then he's engaged. But if he's just not having it, he's checked out, I get it. But the guy made a couple of great catches yesterday, made a diving catch. Now, granted, the run scored, but is he supposed to then just jump out like a dart on the diving catch? Because it's the only run that they scored on Fedde. He was not going to be able to throw the guy out at home. But I think both can be true. I mean, think about it. He started off his career as a winner and hurt, but since 2022, it has been nothing but losing and losing badly. And that can drag on a man. So maybe he does kind of have that attitude of, look, I'm not dealing with this garbage because we're a bad team. Doesn't matter. And you should be upset with that because, again, you are, Luis Robert Jr. is a professional. People pay hard-earned money to go watch him play. And I know this team is terrible, but every now and again, if you've checked out, you should still check back in to see Luis Robert Jr. play baseball. He's amazing. He's been on a tear. And you should demand the best from him every time. I mean, because the only thing that you can really demand from a player, I'm not a big fan of TW, because you can have the will to win, but this is a game of failure. The one thing, though, that you should ask is on every single play that they're involved, that they run the hardest that they can, that they do the very best that they can. And I see that sometimes the perception is Luis doesn't do that. Now, maybe the other thing is he's just so good that he makes the routine look even more routine. And yes, he is good at baseball. I get his numbers don't reflect that. He can be right now. And yes, he can be maddening as a free swinger at the plate. But he's such a tremendously talented player that's worth watching. And I have this feeling that the losing has been grinding on him to the point where, yeah, he's just like, screw it. We're going to lose anyway. Maybe he's developed that we're going to lose anyway mentality. And I think that sometimes gets missed. Also, on the recent trade rumors swirling around Robert Jr., New York Post baseball insider John Heyman, he did his little podcast yesterday. He says the Mariners and the Dodgers are the best landing spot. He said the Phillies probably want a fourth outfielder, so they're probably not a good match for the Sox. But hey, if they want a fourth outfielder, can I entice you about Tommy Pham, Philadelphia? Well, you and I know I do Way Back Wednesday every week, except for the last 2 weeks, as I've had guests on Wednesdays, but I do like to once a week go back to the better days as you and I navigate through this awful season. So let's do a Throwback Thursday, and let's discuss the drafts and trades of the last 2 major rebuild eras and see if there are parallels to this current rebuild next on Locked On White Sox. This episode of Locked On White Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. And yes, we're talking about your rivals cities with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rivals city. After the All-Star break, the Sox are going to Kansas City. Why not head out there to check out the Negro League Museum, get some barbecue, and check off visiting another rival stadium off your list. The Texas Rangers have a relatively newish stadium. Head on down to Arlington and cross off that stadium as the Sox will play a 4-game stand after they take on the Royals. Use Booking.com to find a place to lay your head. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. That's right. You can make a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. And the Chicago White Sox might be terrible this season, but it is still professional baseball being played at Guaranteed Rate Field. Paul Skeens is not likely to pitch next weekend at Guaranteed Rate Field, but Garrett Crochet, he's scheduled to start on July 12th, and there might be only so many starts he makes for the Southsiders with all these trade rumors swirling around him. That is why, if you want to take in a game, use the Game Time app. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They got zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And the White Sox wrap up a 3-game set against Cleveland Guardians today. First pitch is at 12:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Thank you for sticking with me this long. Shout out to all my everydayers. Hope you guys have a good 4th of July today. My plans, I'm going to check out a parade, have a cookout. Still got to figure out which fireworks I'm going to go see. So hopefully your cookouts are really good today and you get to see a good fireworks show. All right, so you better hope the White Sox string together some first-round draft choices as they did it in 1987 through 1990 and not like 2017 through 2020. Now, those were the two periods that you can point and say the Sox were definitely rebuilding. However, 1990 was a bonus year as the Sox went from worst in 1989 to winning over 90 games. The trend for the 2019 and 2020 first-round choices is obviously favorable. But again, those guys were just two contributing pieces on the 2021 AL Central title team. I mean, 1987 through 1990, those drafts literally built the 1993 AL West Division champion Chicago White Sox. And even though the Sox will not declare that they are officially in another rebuild, they are, even though they're trying to turn things around fast. But if the Sox want to do it right, you got to hope they follow the path former GM Larry Himes took. And then when he was not retained as general manager because wasn't very popular with the fans, wasn't very popular with Jerry Reinsdorf, Ron Schuler, he kept that momentum going. And because Himes' major trade and two minor ones paid off, while you and I are still dealing with the mess of Rick Hahn's botched trades during the last decade's rebuild, you kind of want to hope the parallel that Chris Getz has is more with Himes than with Rick Hahn. All right, so from 1987 to 1990, the Sox drafted Jack McDowell with the 5th pick in the 87 draft, Robin Ventura at 10 in the 88 draft, Frank Thomas at 7 in the 1989 draft, and Alex Fernandez at number 4 in the 1990 draft. That is getting a Hall of Famer, the ace, and the number 2 pitcher, and the complimentary piece to Thomas in 4 drafts. That's an amazing run. It's almost unheard of. But that's what the Sox need to do. The Sox also selected Jason Beret in the 1990 draft in the 36th round, and he became the 4th pitcher in that outstanding rotation that won the 1993 AL West. The Sox also made a major trade in 1989. My first heartbreak as a White Sox fan. That's when I realized that's when my innocence was lost. When they traded Harold Baines, and he was the face of the franchise for 10 years. And if you were a kid growing up in the 80s, you had 2 favorite players unquestioned. Harold Baines, and even though he played for the Cubs, Andre Dawson. I mean, Andre Dawson was the man. I don't care if he played for the Cubs. You also had Mark Race, too. I mean, you got to love Mark Race and Ryan Sandberg and Greg Maddux. They had there was 4 Cubs. Even though I was not a Cubs fan, you watched a ton of WGN baseball. And those were the 4 guys that you were like, okay, I can watch these guys. For the White Sox, especially in the late 80s, it was Ivan Calderon, who I've gone over on a Way Back Wednesday, but he wasn't exactly a draw. He was great to watch, though. But Harold Baines was the man, and they just upped and traded him. And they traded him to the Texas Rangers for Scott Fletcher and some prospects named Wilson Alvarez and Sammy Sosa. Now, obviously, Sammy had to go to the Cubs to become a superstar, and yeah, he went to the Cubs, and that's how he became a superstar. That's all I'm going to leave it at, because that's what Sammy wants you to believe. As he was traded for George Bell a few years later, and Bell helped on the 93 team, Alvarez became the third pitcher in that stellar rotation. The Sox also traded for closer Roberto Hernandez and Lance Johnson in smaller deals. And plus some scout, I believe his name was Jerry Krause, pushed for the Sox in 1984 to trade for Ozzie Guillen. Now, Ozzie was there before the rebuild, but Hernandez and Johnson were vital cogs, and the Sox moved veteran Jose De Leon to get the one dog in 1988. Now, let's fast forward to 2016 when the last decade's rebuild officially kicked off. The Sox drafted Jake Berger at number 11 in 2017, Nick Madrigal at number 4 in 2018, Andrew Vaughn at number 3 in 2019, and Garrett Crochet at number 11 in 2020. So obviously Berger, he became a fan favorite in 2023, but 2 Achilles injuries delayed his arrival time. He was able to eventually make a cup of coffee appearance in 2021, but it wasn't like he was exactly helping them with the winning. And all he ever had was power for the Sox. And he was eventually traded last year. And let's hope Jake Eater helps the next good team. Madrigal was a high floor, low ceiling pick, and you just cannot do that with the number 4 pick. You should go high ceiling, impact player. Madrigal was, he doesn't strike out, but he had no pop in his bat. He was terrible at running the bases and was eventually traded to the Cubs. Vaughn, the jury is still out on whether he will be more than a replacement level player. He's obviously on a tear right now, but he might just be a replacement level player. And Crochet, he's obviously on the trajectory to being a consistent top 5 vote getter in the Cy Young race. He's also being dangled on the trade market, much like Baines. And the team is basically, it sounds like, refusing to pay him, much like they refused to pay Jack McDowell. Major trades of that era that involved Chris Sale, Adam Eaton, and Jose Quintana, they briefly looked like huge wins for the Sox, as they got Lucas Giolito, Michael Kopech, Yoel Moncada, Dylan Cease, and Eloy Jimenez. They used that core to win the 2021 AL Central. But the injuries and inconsistency in their development tailing off also is what got the Sox in this mess in the first place. So if Chris Getz is going to be wheeling and dealing, and then he's going to be working with scouting director Mike Shirley in his first draft, he must walk away with players that can be vital pieces to sustain winning. Now, Shirley may have given him a head start in the past 3 starts as he's drafted Colson Montgomery, pitcher Noah Schultz, who could have a blackjack McDowell impact, and Jacob Gonzalez, who at the very least should be a solid piece in the infield. So maybe this pick is just the 5th of a string of very good drafts that sets the foundation for the next good team. But you got to hope that the Sox have more of what they had in 87 through 90 and avoid what they had in 2017 through 2020, because they only walked away with basically one player that'll probably be on this team long term, because it looks like they're going to be trading Garrett Crochet, which is sad. All right, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Before I go, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on the YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll be back tomorrow to go over the good and the bad in the series the Sox had against Cleveland, along with the keys / what to watch for against Miami. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page at Locked On White Sox, or follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to leave comments about today's topics regarding Erick Fedde deserving to be an all-star, but might not getting the nod, Luis Robert Jr. caring about the game, and Throwback Thursday. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub, or at Locked On Sox, or email me at LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.